Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, is finished. Now, if you recall, a few weeks ago, I made a video and I told you, hey, this is how you're going to know when Hamas is actually done, finished, kaput. Once you see the Egyptians move closer to the United States and the Israeli position, you'll know the Egyptians have lost fear from Hamas riling shit up in Egypt. That's how you're going to know. Now, that hasn't happened yet because Hamas still maintains somewhat of a functioning framework over its so-called organization, but the head of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, has lost its power. He lost the locker room. He lost the ability to make any meaningful decisions. He's gone, at least politically. Allow me to show you exactly how and why. Now, up until October 7th, Sinwar was the leader of the military wing of Hamas. After the so-called success of October 7th, he became the leader, the new Salah ad-Din of the Hamas movement. He became the shot caller. That just backfired. And that happened away from Gaza, all the way back in Qatar, of all places. Allow me to explain. So one thing you need to understand is the level of despise and hatred between the PLO, which has now become the Palestinian Authority, and the Hamas organization. They hate each other almost as much as they hate the Israelis and the Jews. Hamas is a religious-based organization. It's always been driven by a God-given holy war against the Jews, against the destruction of Israel. It has nothing to do with politics, and they see people who are completely secular, such as the PLO, which is a political secular movement that has nothing to do with God and Allah and none of this stuff. And they're basically saying, look, this is our land. We think we own this land. We think that Israel should not be here. And we will play the long game to try and take it back over the next 50 years. We'll play the political game. We'll play the international game. We'll sign deals with them. Anything that gets us closer to a Palestinian state in the original pre-1948 state. The mere fact that these guys, the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, is willing to recognize Israel, to sign deals with Israel, to cooperate with Israel, they see them as infidels. They see them as traitors. They hate them with a vengeance. Now, in 2005, when Gaza was basically evicted from all Israeli presence, all the soldiers left, all the settlers left, Gaza was given back to the Palestinians 100%. Once the Israelis left, what immediately followed is Hamas took power and then killed brutally, publicly, every single Palestinian Authority member they could get their hands on. And they were very vicious about it, very public about it. They do not like each other. And they've had bad blood ever since. Hamas basically sees them as collaborators, as cooperating with the enemy, recognizing the state of Israel. Hamas people won't even say Israel. They'll say the Zionist entity. It's that bad. Now we get to today. So, 2 days ago, we hear of a new development. Members of the Palestinian Authority have traveled all the way to Qatar. Why Qatar? Because in Qatar, there's 3 people who basically comprise of the political wing leadership of Hamas. Their names are, in no particular order, Khalid Mashal, Musa Abu Marzouk, and Ismail Haniyeh. So these 3 guys, they call the shots on the political wing. They're the operators. They're billionaires, and they're located all the way in Qatar, away from the carnage. So the PA, the Palestinian Authority, have sent members of their government to discuss a potential collaboration between them and Hamas in the day after. Because what's happening right now is that the United States is saying to the Palestinian Authority, hey, we want you to take over Gaza in the day after. Now, the Palestinian Authority knows that if they come in as some lackey of Israel, as somebody that Israel just put in there, they're never going to get the clout, the cachet, the belief, the confidence from the population, and they will be overthrown again. So they're looking for a cooperation with Hamas, which has more credibility, yes, even still today, on the Palestinian street, so they can create some sort of a common mechanism. The interest of the Palestinian Authority here is clear. They need the Hamas cachet of how much they've done bad things to Israel to have a legitimacy on the Palestinian street in Gaza. So we understand one half of the map of interest here. We know why the Palestinian Authority is trying to get a deal with Hamas. But why would Khalid Mashal, Musa Abu Marzouk, and Ismail Haniyeh will take that meeting to begin with? They've never conversed with these guys. They hate each other. So why did this meeting happen? And why did they even publicly discuss the possibility of working together in the day after in Gaza? Well, the reason is because these guys are political sharks. They're survivalists. So they already understand that Sinwar is gone, that the IDF is basically mopping up, and there's nothing strategically that Hamas can do right now in Gaza to stop the IDF from taking the entire thing. So they're trying to move on to the next best thing, which is to split control with the PLO, because the PLO is getting the backing of the United States. That's the map of interest. Now, obviously, that goes directly against what the military wing believes in and what Sinwar believes in, and that was a huge insult to Sinwar. But that's only the beginning of the story. Because once Sinwar heard about this meeting, and yes, he watches all the news, he reads all the newspapers in Hebrew, in English, he's a very smart guy. And he understands the psychology of urban population and the Israeli people and the US population. He understands everything much better than people give him credit. So once Sinwar heard about this meeting, he was like, hell no. And he went public with it and said, no, cut this shit out right now. I forbid you to have these talks. This is unacceptable. That will never happen. And then the meeting got broken off. He said no. He put his foot down. He's the leader. Everybody dispersed. And that was the end of it. Today, we hear Musa Abu Marzouk, which is one of the three guys I mentioned earlier, one of the top three guys in the political wing, and the so-called number two after Khalid Mashal, comes out today and says this: we are willing to recognize the existence of Israel and to work jointly with the Palestinian Authority in order to establish a Palestinian state in the 1967 borders. Now, that sentence alone, you have to understand what it means. It goes against everything that Hamas believes in. He just said the word Israel, which he has never said. In fact, from his previous speech in Gaza in 2014, he literally said, I will never cooperate with this Zionist entity. He has never said the word Israel. So this guy names Israel, saying he's willing to recognize it, which he already did in the sentence. He's willing to collaborate with the Israeli collaborators, the PA, the Palestinian Authority, and he's willing to compromise on the 1967 borders, which goes directly against the entire idea of Hamas, which is we want it all. We want every single square inch from the river to the sea. Remember that? So he just said something incredibly offensive after Yahya Sinwar, the so-called leader of Hamas, said no, hell no. He comes out publicly and says something that directly contradicts the Tony Soprano of Hamas. Now that means one thing. They understand that Sinwar is now irrelevant, that he's finished, and his days are numbered. Whether the Israelis actually kill him or he runs away and hides for the rest of his life, it doesn't matter. But he lost the ability to make decisions, to be relevant, and to impact what's going on politically. He's done. He's finished. Otherwise, Musa Abu Marzouk would have never said this because he would be dead in 24 hours. Now, what this means for the Palestinians, what this means for Israel. Look, it's not good for Israel because this seems like the Palestinian Authority, with some spiking of Hamas, may get a foothold in Gaza in the day after. That's not a good option for Israel. But it's even worse for Sinwar. Now, what needs to happen in Gaza is something completely different. It shouldn't be the PA, the Palestinian Authority, and not Hamas. Something entirely different. And I've explained it in a whole video in which I broke down what needs to be the proper way to govern Gaza in the day after that will bring peace to the Palestinians and the Israelis for a long, long time and will end this once and for all. If you want to check out this video, it's right here. If you haven't subscribed, right here. I'll see you in the next video. Yes, I'm wearing a suit.